Hello everybody. Today I'm going to be doing some lens cleaning with this lens and some of my other most frequently used lenses. And I'm also going to blow the dust off of the sensor on this camera body. So we'll get the mirror up out of the way and get the dust out of there if there is any. I am going to put on these gloves because I want to minimize the possibility of getting any oils from my hands on the lenses, on the glass that is. Okay. I am notoriously bad at cleaning my camera gear, and it's usually not until something shows up in a picture that I think, wow, I better fix that. So usually it shows up as dust spots, sort of darker patches, darker circles on an image. And that's how you know you have dust spots, and they're easy to remove in post, but it's good to keep your sensor clean. And those dust spots are usually from dust on the sensor and not from dust on the lens. But this particular lens, I was on a shoot recently, and I didn't realize that my kids had touched the lens when I was doing a different shoot with some video, and they were there, and they must have touched the glass. And so on this other shoot, I got back, got all the pictures into Lightroom, and noticed that there were blotchy areas with low contrast, and it almost looked like lens flare. But I know it wasn't lens flare because it didn't show up. It showed up no matter what angle I was facing. Usually lens flare just happens if there's direct light shining into the lens or coming in at an angle, but even when I was facing away from the sun, I still had it. So I came back and saw some nasty fingerprints on this. So we're going to try to clean that. But first, I think let's get this sensor cleaned, okay? So we're going to remove the lens, set the body down gently. And I always try to set the body so that this opening for the lens mount is pointed down, and that's just so things can't fall in there. Random dust flying through the air isn't going to get on there. And I'm going to be using this blower. Move this out of the way a little bit. I'm going to be using this blower, and it's just a simple air blower with this attachment that I don't really know the science, but I think it ionizes the air or deionizes the air. I'm not really sure, but it essentially removes static. And so if you have dust clinging to something on something electronic, this will discharge the static and allow the dust to come off more easily. So you just press it, and when the light's green, you can okay, so that gets the mirror, but we need to actually access the sensor. So in order to do that, as you can see in there, that's actually just the mirror there. And there, it's the mirror. So we need to turn it on, and I'm going to flip the mirror up. Okay, now the mirror's up, and the shutter curtain is exposed. So actually need to use the mirror up mode for cleaning, but I think my battery's too low on my body right now, and it's not letting me activate that. So I'm actually going to have to just get to the sensor another time. But that is how you want to do it, and you would just blow the air up in there again to get the dust off the sensor. Okay. So let's just remove any possible dust from the rear of this lens. Okay, looks good. Let's put that back. Okay. Let's remove the lens cap. What I'm going to do first is just take a microfiber cloth like this. And I'm just going to use it to lightly brush any loose dust. Well, I can actually blow it first. Okay, and then just lightly brush any kind of loose dust off of there. You don't want to be too heavy-handed with this because you could scratch the lens if there was a piece of sand or something, or a rough piece of grit on there and you push really hard. So we want to remove any of that first, just lightly. And then I'm going to take my lens cleaner and we don't want to spray this directly on the glass because you could get it liquid up inside the elements there. We're going to use a lens cleaning tissue. Fold it over a couple times. And just do a really light misting. That's it. Just one little spray. And then very gently, with a circular motion, just kind of go over the glass and slowly remove any kind of fingerprints or gunk. Now, these cleaning cloths are kind of old and they're disintegrating on me. So after we're finished this step, I'm going to come back with the microfiber cloth and give it a final once over. Okay, let's take that. It's looking kind of streaky right now, so let's take this cloth. Again, just circular. I'm not pressing too hard here, but just a little bit. Now, I would not recommend using spray on your lens on a regular basis because ideally nobody is touching the glass to get it to that point. Usually all you should have to do is just use a blower or microfiber cloth like this, just lightly dust. Yeah, there goes an airplane overhead. Sorry about that. I'm actually going to put a little spray on this because I think this might do a better job. looks really good. Much better. I may go ahead and just dispense with those old cleaning cloths because I think I got them free from a camera store one time when I bought a lens there, and they just happened to have a bucket of them they were trying to get rid of. So who knows how old they are. As you can see, the packaging is rather yellowed, and so I think they're probably kind of old. Okay, so hopefully that's the only lens that I have to spray. Okay, we'll figure that out later. So, that's looking quite nice. Very nice. Okay. You could also use some compressed air to try to get some of the grit out of here. I do believe I've used this lens during a hurricane one time out on the beach. Not advisable, but sand did get everywhere. Okay. Now, let's set this aside. And now I'm going to just get the dust off some of these lenses that I use more frequently than others. So this here is a 60mm Nikon f2.8 micro, which in Nikon terms actually means macro, which means it's used for photographing things close up. And I'll probably do a video about this lens at some point, but when you focus it to 1:1, it extends in a really interesting fashion. If you take a look inside, it's really neat. Okay, so I'm just going to use the blower on this because the front element is quite recessed in there. Let's turn this on, just in case. Looks good to me. The other thing you might want to consider doing is just blowing off your lens cap because dust gets in there. And then obviously it could fall right back down inside the lens, so keeping those clean is not a bad idea. This is getting kind of difficult with the gloves, so I'm not planning on touching any of these with the cleaning cloth anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and remove these. Okay. Makes things a little bit easier. Okay, so go. And we'll just dust off the rear element and the rear cap. You can see mine got placed in some mud or dirt recently. I should probably clean that at some point. Okay, that one's good. Next, this is the Nikon 105 2.5. This is probably my favorite lens. I use it a lot for portraits, headshots, closer, intimate landscapes, It works great with extension tubes for macro photography. There's definitely some grit in there. I don't know if you can hear that. Right there. That's not good. Oops. And the last time I used this, I left the circular polarizing filter on, so we're going to try to take that off if it's not too stuck. There we go. Okay. Now there's still a little bit of dust on there, so I'm just going to take my cloth very lightly, brush some of that off. This is a beautiful old Nikon manual focus lens, and I really love taking pictures with this. Okay, let's dust this off. Let's do the back. Let's see, what should I do next? Let's do this one. This is another one of my favorites. This is the Nikon 200mm f4. I bought this used for $50 at a camera store. And one of my favorite things to do when I'm in a town that I've never been to before is to try to find a local camera store and see what kind of surprises might be there. And this was one of them. This lens is in pristine condition. And for those of you who know anything about cameras or lenses, you know that to have a 200mm lens that fits in the palm of your hand like this is quite a special thing indeed. So it's great for walking around and doing some candid street photography. It also works great for portraits. It's got a retractable lens hood. Oh, let's do the front. Great lens. Ooh, that's dusty. Wow. Okay, let's take the cloth. Do a really light brushing here. And I'm going to be making some more videos where I show you some images I've taken with these different lenses and just kind of talk about the properties and the characteristics of each of them. So I hope you all look forward to that. Okay, so I actually left for a little bit and charged up the battery for this. So we're going to take a quick break from cleaning lenses, and we're going to clean the sensor for real on this. So let me remove this lens. Okay, So before, we were using this command dial here to switch the shutter mode to mirror up, MUP, so that when I depress the shutter button, it lifts the shutter. I'm sorry, it lifts the mirror. But in that mode, it's a little hard to see, but it just looks black, right? That's because the shutter curtain is down over the sensor. So in order to actually get to the sensor, you have to use a different mode. So we're going to turn the camera on, and we're going to go into the menu. And now that my battery's been charged, you see that that mirror lockup function is now available. So I'll click over to that. I'll go to Start. And this is just telling you that when the shutter button is pressed, mirror lifts and shutter opens. That's what we want. And then to lower it, we just turn the camera off. So let's press the shutter button. Oops, let's get that back. Okay, so now, if you look in there, again, you can't really see with this particular video, but now the sensor is completely exposed. So I'm going to take this, turn it on, and I'm going to just get any possible dust on that sensor. We're going to put it back down and then do one more just to get anything that might still be on the mirror itself. Okay, so still see a little dust on there, I think. Okay. So let's leave that facing down so dust doesn't fall into it. And let's clean the last lens here. So this one's kind of special, kind of unique. This is the Samyang, sometimes branded as Rokinon, 24mm 3.5 tilt shift. So what does that mean? Well, it means that I can either tilt the lens or I can shift the lens in relation to the plane of the sensor. And as I do a fair amount of architecture and interior photography, it is quite handy to be able to use that shift function. I don't use the tilt function as much. You see it used a lot in images that sort of fake that miniature look. So for example, you might have seen a photograph of a cityscape or a scene where it almost looks like a model train layout, but it's real. And that's using that tilt function to essentially skew what's in focus and what's out of focus in a fairly unnatural way. And it makes things look like they're little miniatures. So, but I don't use that as much. It can also be useful for getting more of a scene in focus than you normally would be able to. But I use it, I use the shift function a lot. So let me blow out the end here. And we're going to go ahead and mount this on the camera so I can show you some of the, how some of the buttons work. Let me remove the cap. Okay. There's the front element. I'm just going to dust that off real quick. Okay. Put the cap back on. Okay, so this camera's old enough that it doesn't have live view, so I won't be able to show you on the back in real time as I'm shifting the lens. But I will show you on the front sort of how it works. So the black knob is a lock. Okay. I'm sorry, I have it backwards. I'm confused. The gray knob is your lock. The black knob is what actually, you saw it fell there, is what actually shifts the lens either up, if you can see that, or down. And then because the weight of the lens can sometimes just drop it, you need that lock button to hold it in place. But what this does is it allows you to take, let's say you're right here, and you don't want to tilt your camera up to get a tall building because it will skew the vertical lines together. You can leave your camera level and simply shift the lens up in order to get the top of a tall building. So let me lock this real quick. And you can also turn the entire lens on its axis. And you can go left and right then, instead of just up and down. So, let me turn it back. It's hard to do this facing the wrong direction. There we go. And then to show you the swing of the tilt function, again, the gray button is the lock, so I'll undo that at the bottom. And then we can rotate. Get a better angle there. It essentially swings the lens to put different things in focus, different plane of focus. And again, you can rotate the entire thing around to do it on the other plane as well. So, it's a pretty interesting lens. It's all manual focus. And the aperture ring is all manual as well. But it does meter with the camera. You just have to input some of the data into the menu so that it knows the focal length and the maximum aperture. And at that point, every time you change the aperture, the camera will actually know what aperture you're on and can then meter. So that's that lens. Very, very useful, very handy, and a lot of fun. So I think that's it for today. I'm very glad you all have joined me for this cleaning, and I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. So I'm just going to fold this like this, put it in this package. See you all next time.